do as Mitchell looks for an answer.
Ooh, pure, nothing but net.
Garland to the basket, stole the inbound pass. He lays it in.
Basketball down there.
Very high percentage shot for him from that spot. Merrill for three. Tristan Thompson on the floor. Diaz for three. That's short. Hard rebound. Ricochets out to Merrill for three again.
For the We Like Sports Show, tune in and see the latest the crew has to say regarding the latest sports topics nationally and locally. Make sure to check out our website as well, WeLikeSportsPC.com. Subscribe on all platforms, including podcast platforms, YouTube, TikTok, and much more. And be sure to follow us on X at WeLikeSportsPC.
Started with Anderson and Ramirez.
He said, let's go, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he wants the game to start, but they won't let it. And rightfully so.
Welcome to the We Like Sports Show. Once again, I'm Payton Vince alongside Avi and Cameron. I mean, just looking at this intro alone, it's about time we changed it up. I mean, Terry Francona was saying goodbye in this intro, and now this next year he's back at it again, not even in Cleveland. He's just a little bit further south down in Cincinnati. But it's time for a change, I think, at this point. But boys, how you doing?
Pretty good over here. Long day working, but happy to be with you guys, having some good conversations. I poured myself a glass of wine. It's that kind of day. So let's have a good time. Let's talk some sports, entertain the people.
Wow, he's a wine guy. Who would have thought?
Yeah, that's surprising to me too. But backwards hat again, Peyton. Avi, I'll do you one better. We'll both rep Cleveland today.
You know, I still am. It's just it's a little different.
Okay,
still in guards mode, unfortunately.
Go.
Oh, there we
It'll
go.
Be here soon enough.
I didn't even see the transition. But I mean, guys, it's so much to talk about today too. I mean, right away, the first thing that ends up coming up, the fight. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Let's talk about that one first. I mean, a lot of people on TikTok, I mean, everybody has their own conspiracies. Do you guys think it was rigged at all at the end of the day?
Cam, you go ahead.
Rigged. I mean, I wouldn't say rigged. I would say Tyson could have put more effort towards it, but I mean, why would he? I mean, he's 58. He's making $20 million in that fight. He didn't have to win. He just, decided go out there and box. He didn't put his full into it, but rigged, I wouldn't say he took everything there for a rig. In other terms, though, it's just sad to see how that fight played out.
Yeah, I mean, being on social media a little bit today during lunch, I saw a number of videos of people saying, he was pulling punches, talking about Tyson. And there's another conspiracy flying around. If we want to dive into that a little bit, I find it interesting. There's a point in the fight where Jake Paul goes in for the clinch. I actually believe Tyson goes in for the clinch on Jake Paul. And you can clearly see that somebody says something and then there's a tap on the back. And for the rest of the fight, there's not a serious punch thrown. And to me, it's a little fishy. I don't want to be throwing out accusations just yet because, we'll hear from the big wigs at some network if there is something that comes out. But
that is true.
For right now, let's say it was fishy. It smelled a little bit.
And I mean, overall, too, my personal thoughts, and I know I got some hate for it, but I don't care. I honestly liked the fight because even if you look at it from a bigger picture, it was good for boxing. A lot of people watched boxing that probably did not give a single care in the world whatsoever until that fight. You had a huge gate. I mean, you had a lot of people watching. You had a lot of eyes on it. Yeah, Netflix gave you some issues, but that's bound to happen when you have that many people watching. But, I mean, it was good for Tyson. It was good for Jake Paul. Mike Tyson ended up, he proved to himself, hey, you know what? I could hang. I could still at least be in the ring. I could train. it's probably smart for me to retire, but I could at least be capable of being in the boxing ring one more time. And for Jake Paul, I mean, he's adding more and more people to the list that if you want to end up getting paid, Jake Paul's your guy. And then, I mean, overall, your resume, even if you are barely winning on decisions, you're still getting some kind of notoriety, but it's not the type that the true boxing world, I believe, actually wants to end up facing. Like, he's not going to end up really facing Terrence Crawford. He's not going to end up facing Floyd Mayweather. And if he does, the same debate's going to end up happening. But that's my thoughts on it. I don't know about you guys, what you guys ended up thinking about the fight. But Cam, Avi, either one of you guys, whoever wants to go first, feel free to chip in.
Sure. Yeah. I went into the fight kind of having the same mentality as you. Like, I was very excited to see Mike Tyson fight, regardless of age. It's the first time we've seen him fight at this scale in a long time. Oh, looks like we lost Payton. Hopefully he comes back. Anyways, first time we saw him fight at this scale in years, decades even. He fought a few fights in the past 15 years, but nothing of notoriety. But after this fight, I was really disappointed. I think a lot of us went into it expecting to see a competitive fight, and that's just not what we got at all. And I will say this about Jake Paul. While, kind of like Peyton was saying, he's not a world-class fighter by any means. I don't think he'd be happy with me saying that, but I think he's got to prove it against a true. But what I will say about Jake Paul is that he is, in my opinion, the greatest promoter of a fight that we've seen in recent time. I mean, what that guy has done is unprecedented to put together these celebrity fights. Talk about the first fight ever broadcast on Netflix, and now we're going to be seeing we have Christmas Day football coming up on Netflix. So I think it's a start to something much bigger, and you can only commend Jake Paul for that.
Yeah, I would have to say that going into this fight, it had that. I don't think people really understood it, but going into it with the nostalgic feel to it, you're getting a world-class fighter coming back to fight again. And like you said, Jake Paul definitely needs the credit for it. If you didn't grow up watching boxing, you weren't going to watch it. Jake Paul is bringing more viewership to boxing, whether it's just his fights or if it's more viewership for other fights as well. I definitely think that's a big plus there. And on top of that, you brought up the Netflix thing. I know Peyton's big into it, is, wrestling. They're going to be going to one of their shows are going to Netflix as well. So that's going to be a weekly thing for them. Netflix is expanding their zone here, and it's definitely paying off. Now, definitely got to upgrade those servers a little bit. We've seen way too many of those issues over the weekend, but hey, I mean, in due time, man, with popularity, stuff has to grow and expand and get better. And we're going to see more and more of that with more streaming services. We already have the NFL on Amazon, and it's just going to continue to go up from here.
I mean, I completely agree with you. It was definitely, it's a step in the right direction. And like, even on the wrestling side with WWE Raw moving over to Netflix too at the start of the new year, you don't really have to face the TV guidelines that the language that sometimes ends up being bleeped out. It's more free reign, and more so that you're a human. You're not supposed to be restricted necessarily with either post-fight interviews, pre-game, fan interaction, whatever it may be. But I mean, people that are watching the show today too, feel free to end up commenting down below. I have a question for you at some point today with the AFC and football, but feel free to end up chipping on your thoughts with whatever with boxing. I mean, next we're going to end up going to the UFC, and the fact that, I mean, we were watching it all in different places, but we were watching it. I mean, Cam ended up having a great weekend too, from what I ended up hearing. I mean, we lost out on some money, but he had a good weekend. But Stipe ended up retiring. John Jones beat Stipe. And again, that's another fight. I mean, I never really ended up watching UFC consistently. I never ended up really watching boxing consistently. But this weekend ended up having a change of pace for me that I actually paid attention more so. And with Stipe, I mean, he's a local guy, and it's disappointing to end up seeing him retire, but it was at least nice to see him in one more fight for the championship as well. And I mean, whether you want to end up facing the facts or not, I mean, where he ended up getting kicked at in the ribs, it's tough to end up staying vertical at the end of the day.
Yeah, that is a kick that landed right on his ribs. I mean, that is something that we haven't gotten the confirmation yet. I don't believe on if it was a broken rib or not, but you can clearly see that was right to the lower rib. I will say that, you know, my belief is obviously John Jones is one of the best, if not the best fighter in UFC history. Going into that, going into that fight was a lot of anticipation. I thought that you could see Stipe win that just because the longer that fight went on, that's usually when Stipe gets better. That's been proven his career. I mean, he's faced some mammoth opponents. You know, if you want to go back to Overeem, you want to go back to the three Cormier fights, you want to go to DeSantos. You know, that's that's just who Stipe is. He's a great fighter. Now, a lot of people are going to talk about this, and this is the thing that ended up going, you know, into discussion right afterwards is, hey, now you got to fight Tom Aspinall. There's no ducking him. Dana White already came out and said, John Jones, you have to face him or you're not going to be in UFC anymore. And I see in the comments right now, the fight was a year late. It's a year late. John Jones tore his pec 2 weeks before the fight last year. So that definitely delayed a lot of the time there, but we're going to see what happens now with John Jones. I mean, he went up in the class, he went to the heavyweight and he did his business against Stipe, whether it was, a fluke kick or not, it was perfectly squared up right on his rib.
Yeah, I don't want to speak too much to this because I'm not the biggest UFC guy. Cam and I watched the fights this weekend together, and I was telling him, I love watching fighting. I just didn't grow up with it. It wasn't something I had in my household. But that being said, I had told Cam I have a feeling John Jones wins this fight just with all the hype around it and the talk about John Jones going in and the highlight of his athleticism at this weight class and the conversations that were had during the prelims. It really seemed like John Jones had a leg up. And I mean, you could see it in the ring during that fight. It was pretty clear all around that John Jones dominated that fight. Unfortunately, we would have loved to celebrate a Stipe win here in Cleveland out at the bar, and it would have been a great time, and we still had a great time. But that being said, sad to see him lose, but happy to see him retire and still one of the most dominant heavyweights of all time.
Yeah, and I completely agree too with Thomas Adams just saying that it was a long layoff. And I mean, you could play that what if game with a lot of things too, saying that if this fight ended up happening a year ago or 2 years ago, it would look different. But I mean, that's any scenario. Like if you could play that what if game with just about pinkies up. But you could play that what if game with just about anything though too. You guys are Browns fans for the most part, mainly Cam. I forgot Avi was a Giant fan, but he gets it though. You could play that what if game of what if they drafted somebody different. For the Giants, what if they didn't draft Daniel Jones? What if the Browns didn't draft Myles Garrett and got Patrick Mahomes? Like you could play that all along, and it just depends on the year. But unfortunately, that's what happened. And sometimes you end up running into a fighter that is slightly younger than you, and Stipe over time. I mean, maybe it also has something to do with the fact that for his job as a firefighter, he ended up getting full time. So it wasn't just necessarily a focus on UFC fighting anymore, but more so with his family, more so with actually his job, because it's not an easy job being a firefighter at the end of the day. But it would have actually been interesting to see it in that capacity. But I'm the same way as Avi. I'm not a big UFC guy at all, but I'll end up watching it if it's on. I mean, usually whenever I'm at my buddy's house in the past, I'll end up watching it. We'll end up sitting around bullshitting for a while, hanging out. And then from there, okay, the fight's on, but we're still talking. It's just not a main focus. But when things are going down, then you're intrigued in seeing what's going on. But, I mean, it was interesting weekend overall from the fighting aspect too. You ended up having back-to-back Cleveland guys too. Whether or not you want to end up saying that Jake Paul claims Cleveland, he's an Ohio guy though at the end of the day, and he's really close. Even if you do say Westlake, same thing with Stipe. And I think it was nice to see the notoriety and just the recognition for someone in Cleveland though on both sides in 2 consecutive days too, because a similar situation with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson's fight. They ended up also having to cancel early on at one point until rescheduling it later on, because wasn't that supposed to be during the summer?
Yeah, that's true. It was moved. I believe it was because Mike Tyson actually had he claims a near-death experience. You know, he forget exactly what the ailment was, but it was something that not only did it set him back from fighting, but it almost killed him, according to a tweet he put out. So to see him, battle back from that and still get in the ring is definitely impressive. Before we do wrap up the fights, though, I want to mention, honestly, my favorite part of the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight was the Jake Paul walkout where he came out in a Gas Monkey Garage custom car. It was ridiculous and awesome. It was WWE-esque. It was fantastic.
Well, and
it wasn't
buffering. WWE.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, he had Logan with him in the car there, and it was just funny to watch it. They're driving at like 0.2 of a mile of an hour, going as slow as possible, listening to Phil Collins in the air tonight. I mean, how does that not get you fired up?
Very true. Very true. Cam, do you want to end up adding anything else for the fights over the weekend before we end up taking one more step forward with, I think it's going to end up going some football talk and then probably basketball. And if we hit baseball, we hit baseball. But I think that's the setup for today because we are only leading you up until 6:45, which would be right around before the time of the Cavaliers that are 15-0 against the Boston Celtics.
With me with the fights, man, I just got to say, shout out to the women's fight right before Serrano and I might be botching that name entirely right now. Long day for myself, but and Katie Taylor, those women just went fisticuffs, hammering. That was entertaining, unbelievable. Whether you agree with the outcome or not, she was definitely screwed in my opinion. Avi and I talked about this as well. That was definitely something there. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, between that fight being, I would say that's number one for me out of these two. Now everyone talks about John Jones and Stipe fight as well. It was a good fight, but Chandler and God, I'm blanking on the name right now. Oliveira, that's it. Thank you. Those two went at it as well. I mean, that was a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, that was. And Chandler always ends up, again, not a huge UFC guy, but at least I know the name Chandler at the end of the day, and he's usually pretty tough. I mean, that ending to that fight was enough that even if you weren't a UFC person, you'll see it over the socials one way or another. Which with our social, if you want to end up following us, mine's in my name, Cam's in his name. Avi ends up just using Twitter, and he just tweets Bucky's.
What's up with it? Come on, we need Bucky's.
We need Bucky's, dude.
We need Bucky's. And can we get one up closer to us first? That's the question.
At We Like Sports PC on Twitter too, or X, whatever one. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. But football talk. This was the surprise question that anybody could end up chipping in on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, whatever you're watching us on or listening us on. You could end up always tweeting at us later on, and we end up posting it, and you hear it while you're driving, working out, whatever you may be doing. But the question is, are the Buffalo Bills the team to beat in the AFC?
It's got to be a yes now, no? Like, you go out.
I'm going to go no.
Really?
I'm going to go no. Buffalo always has Kansas City's number during the regular season. Playoff time's a different animal.
Especially in Buffalo, it's true. Well, I'm curious, Kim, who are you leaning towards? Baltimore?
It's still Kansas City. It's still Kansas City.
Yeah.
I would say Pittsburgh, but unfortunately, and that's coming from a Browns fan. Yes, I know. Yes,
There's always
it's going to make Payton really happy there. Yeah, but no, I would say Pittsburgh. But I mean, that offense fell flat against one of the worst defenses that even Cleveland picked apart. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, they are not good enough to take the Pittsburgh to the promised land and be the team to beat. Unfortunately, Peyton, you might disagree, man, but those are two quarterbacks. I think that they're a little average. They're not going to get you to that point. It's definitely still the Chiefs for me.
There's an interesting caveat to the Chiefs that I've heard kind of, circling the rhetoric right now in the NFL, and it's that they don't win games decisively. They're always they're they obviously were undefeated up till this weekend, but they're all in one-score games. They're not doing Lions things. They're not doing Bills things where they're blowing teams out and really showing their dominance. Now that could be looked at as a good thing because in the sense that these games are not easy to win for them, but they come out on top nearly every time. But you can also look at it in a bad way where it's like they should be handling these teams. They should be dominating these teams, and they're not. So my question is, will we see one of those dominant wins down the stretch? And will they carry that momentum into the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
And, I'm kind of torn with the AFC. Like the Bills, regular season wise, every year, Cam's right. The Bills always end up having the tendency, no matter what Kansas City has, to end up winning, whether it's in Kansas City, whether it's not. But they usually have their number. Just kind of like the Browns are usually due. I mean, I hope and I think it's not going to happen this year, but usually in years past, it's usually the Browns always splitting with the Steelers somehow. Even with their worst years in history, they'll find a way somehow because it's a rivalry game. But with the Bills, does Josh Allen have the capacity to actually take the next step? That's the true question, because in years past, it's always him being one shy, one short of Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. You look forward to it every time. You ended up seeing Stephon Diggs' image at Kansas City when they were celebrating with the red smoke on the horizon, and you never ended up seeing what really ended up happening, and you just saw a distraught player that knew he was one step away from the promised land, and he just wasn't quite there. Now he's in Houston. Buffalo ended up losing that. He's hurt now with Houston, but even if you're hurt, you still win a ring if they win one. But with the Buffalo Bills, I don't think it's either team. I don't think it's even necessarily the Steelers either, because like Avi said, with the Chiefs, it's a lot of one-sided games. I mean, look at that game against Buffalo. They almost lost that. If it wasn't for a blocked field goal, they almost lost that game. And a lot of one-possession games, they squeaked out. And maybe they're just coasting to the playoffs, kind of like every year you expect it with Golden State or with basketball like the Celtics. Like usually it's some top dog that just coasts their way through the playoffs, kind of like Brady did in the past with New England, with Tampa, whoever, but they didn't care about it as long as they clinched. And for the Steelers, to go back to Cam's point, I hate to be the guy that ends up saying at the end of the day, a win's a win, but that's twice now this year that they didn't score a touchdown, but they still won the game off of 6 field goals. It's a lot better of an offense, though, looking compared to years past with Kenny Pickett, that they actually have a quarterback and they at least have that capability. I didn't think that they'd necessarily pick the Ravens apart, but if I were to end up incorporating the fact that everything that happened with Cleveland leading up to that Ravens game, I'm sure it'd be a similar result just because there was a lot on the line, a lot of getting the locker room involved. But it could be a surprise team in the AFC, not the Ravens, not the Steelers, not the Chiefs, not the Bills. Could be Houston. Who knows? It could be up for grabs still, but I don't think it's necessarily the Bills. They're close. They're closer, I should say. But there's still a lot of rookies, though, that don't necessarily have that experience yet that you want them to.
No, I'll add on. I'll add on the Buffalo thing here. No Keon Coleman, no Dalton Kincaid. They were not at full strength. They still won that game. But like I said, man, when it comes down to playoffs, it's the Chiefs are just a different animal. They are. Every year they are a different animal, just like San Francisco. Yes, San Francisco might lose a game here and there during the regular season. They're going to come out and they're going to dominate in the playoffs unless somebody's going to play them any better than they are, which we haven't really seen any in the last couple of years. The only team that came close is the number one team in the NFC right now, and that's the Detroit Lions. So we'll see if the Lions can actually capitalize on that there. Steelers with the win of the win. That's definitely a thing. That's wins matter, no matter how you get them. But you can't have that type of play and expect to win with field goals against a team like Kansas City. It's just not, or San Francisco or Detroit in that matter, even if they do make it to the playoffs or the championship. That you can't win on field goals, but they're the third best team in the AFC. That AFC playoff picture is wide open for a lot of teams still as well.
It's hard to disagree with you on pretty much everything you're saying. It is interesting, like you mentioned, that the Bills went out and got a pretty solid win without, their dominant rookie wide receiver and Dalton Kincaid. But that's also kind of been the Bills this year. Like, they've been spreading the ball around. It's a very different passing offense than when they had Stephon Diggs and they were hyper targeting him every game. This is a completely different type of offense, in my opinion. A lot more screen plays, a lot more short yardage plays. You look at a guy like Khalil Shakir. I mean, that dude started this season like 4 games in a row without a drop pass. He had like 6 targets and 6 receptions every game. Look at a guy like that who doesn't really get talked about, but that makes a big difference in a season. So, I think this end of the season, regular season for NFL is going to be wild in the AFC. It'll be fun to watch.
I completely agree with you. And if you want to end up going even a step further too, remember the whole entire conspiracy of Chiefs versus 49ers last year, the same colored logo. It could have been the Ravens because of the fix. I was just curious to end up having the Super Bowl logo for this year. I mean, it's looking like the Chiefs, and if you want to end up considering that part right there as the Packers, maybe. I
go more Vikings. I go more Vikings just because you got a little shade of purple in there with the yellow.
I don't think the Vikings have it, to be honest.
They got to figure it out. They definitely have to figure it out.
I mean, that'd be something, though, if Sam Darnold managed to somehow lead that team after having Kirk Cousins leave, and you had J.J. McCarthy, but he's out for the year. Or, I mean, a step further, too, just looking at the divisions, the Commanders are second place, 7-4. You could look at that as the red. Who knows? If you really want to dive down that conspiracy alley. But the NFC
we can also
South
consider
like every year.
The Eagles as green.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm intrigued to see how, if it's not your basic matchup of Kansas City and the Lions, because I think that's what a lot of people would end up believing. But, I mean, the Commanders are going to end up having their true test at the end of the year. The NFC North, their division, everybody's tough except for the Bears. NFC South, it's up for grabs with just the Falcons above 500 barely. And, I mean, the NFC is a lot closer, and I feel like it's anybody's grab, anybody's taking, because the NFC West is the same way. 6-4 Cardinals, and then the rest of the division, the Rams, Seahawks, 49ers are all 5-5. And the 49ers didn't have McCaffrey either for half of this year. But that depends on what Brock Purdy's injury ends up looking like, though, too, at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting at 5-5 right now. It's going to be tough for them to even make it into the playoffs. I know we'd all like to see 49ers in the playoffs. They're always fun to watch, high-flying offense. But there's a number of things other than just Brock Purdy playing good football that are at play here. I mean, Deebo Samuel doesn't look the same. They're trying to utilize him in that same kind of role they have the past few years, and he's not as explosive. It's not the same offense, in my opinion. They don't have Brandon Ayuk. Don't get me wrong. Juwan Jennings looks great. He's had some amazing weeks, and George Kittle as well. But, now we're seeing George Kittle going down to hamstring injury, kind of the old classic injury for George Kittle this time in the season. And who knows, they could possibly be sitting at, they could lose the next 3 games easily. They play the Bills, the Rams, and the Lions. Those aren't easy games. Those aren't getting. I mean, some might say the Rams is, a bit of a gimme, but they're a good team, and that's December 12th. That's a night game, so they actually have 49ers prime time the next 3 weeks. So See a lot of
Sounds
them.
like it's Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well,
yeah.
I will say on that aspect of it, the Cardinals are currently 6-4. That whole division's wide open. Everyone else is 5-5. Seattle looks like they've completely fell apart. You look at the Rams. The Rams got a good win against the Patriots. It's the Patriots. They're starting to show up, but they're not to that aspect of it yet. But it's going to be tough for the 49ers. Now, the one thing will be is, and this is going to be the question is, Keon Coleman started to show up before his injury. Can you get Ricky Parcell? Can you get him going? Because if you can get him going, he has the ability to be a big body receiver on top of, I mean, we've seen a couple gadget plays from him already. If you don't use Debo in those aspects of it, okay, Debo's your deep threat. Use him as your gadget play. They just got Christian McCaffrey back. Once he gets rolling full steam, I mean, it's kind of hard to stop McCaffrey when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a good point, Cam. Like, who the hell knows what's going to happen with that team? They got pieces. It's just a matter of whether or not they can put it together. And, I worry about McCaffrey re-injuring. He was having issues in both legs with his heels. And on top of that, something else could happen. I mean, just the amount of work that guy's getting in a single game is insane. So we'll see what happens with the 49ers. But, I think another really interesting division is the NFC North. I mean, you got 3 teams above 7 wins. Like, that's pretty sweet at this point in the season. And that's going to come down to the wire. I have a feeling the Vikings may fall off in the division there. Just the way they've been playing. I know they're still 8-2, which is, in my opinion, a bit lucky. They've had, some easy matchups recently with the Titans and the Colts past 2 weeks, and those are a bit gimme for a team of that caliber. But man, that Vikings defense is humming around. I'll tell you what, number 1 defense in fantasy football, and they are fun to watch. So if they can go on a streak here and beat the Cardinals, and then, in 2 weeks on December 29th, beat the Packers, easily into the playoffs for them. So it's going to be interesting finish to the season for that division as well.
And I mean, even one step further with just the way that the divisions are, this is the NFC North now this year with Caleb Williams' first year. If he ends up progressing, I mean, we mentioned it last week, they ended up having the ability to have Caleb Williams finally have the offensive coordinator. Maybe things are clicking, but now if he ends up progressing, and let's say next year, that division could be very difficult. And you're looking at a division that a lot of teams are above 500. And as Keegan May ended up saying on YouTube, Packers are winning the division. And they said if they start Malik Willis, which is very interesting because they did actually hang around pretty well with Malik when Jordan Love was out early on in the year.
Yeah, that's an interesting claim. I was surprised when I saw that pop up on our screen here. I mean, they didn't look great in the first game with Malik, but once he settled in, he looked like a competent NFL quarterback. But at the same time, it's Jordan Love. Like, they drafted this guy to be the guy. They're not going to do that, unfortunately. Keegan, like, that's just the reality of it. That's their guy. The only way that Malik gets any more playing time is re-injury for Jordan Love, which I don't think anyone's rooting for, especially fantasy players that are using Jordan Love as their quarterback 1. So what is he saying here? Jordan Love is making some very stupid throws. Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's still a young quarterback. We can't forget that. He's definitely going to make mistakes down the stretch too. And I think the way the Packers do well in the playoffs is cleaning up their passing play. So.
No, I see Keegan put out there that they paid way too much for him too soon. I mean, unfortunately, it was either pay him or you're going back in the draft because people forget.
Right.
And you would obviously know this being a Packers fan, Keegan, but this is going to come down to with him. He was drafted and benched for 3 years, almost 4 years before Aaron Rodgers was traded away and took over. So it was either pay the guy or, you're going back in the draft. And the Packers have showed that has worked. They benched Rodgers for Brett Favre, and now they did the same thing with Jordan Love, and it's paid off for them last year. They went a pretty good season. They went pretty far. But looking at the Packers next couple of games, I mean, they got the 49ers. that's going to be a tough one for them. Dolphins, they host the Dolphins in Lambeau. That's going to be a bad environment for the Dolphins, especially with the cold front that's been looking like it's going to come through in the next couple weeks for the Midwest states. Then they go on the road against Detroit. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be really tough. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Seattle, very winnable. It's on the road. We'll see what happens there. Saints, very winnable. Vikings, we'll see what their next couple weeks hold, and then you end with the Bears. So Packers can easily get into the playoffs here. The way the NFC is shaping up, with the NFC West, they're just going to keep beating each other, and it's going to keep knocking them down in win totals, and that's the opportunity the Packers are going to need there.
And I understand why they mentioned the fact with Malik Willis too, because when he was playing, not everybody in stats alone doesn't really matter. It definitely depends on the on the field performance too. And the score box never ends up meaning everything. But Malik hasn't thrown an interception when he was the starter for the Packers. And I get it, and that's part of it. But also, Jordan Love was also putting up a lot more yards compared to Malik. It's just he knows the offense a lot more, and Malik just kind of unfortunately fell apart and fell out of the thought of the Titans when he was there. And that's unfortunate. But Jordan Love's worst game was against the Jaguars with 196 passing yards, 1 interception. But Malik was looking at, let me see here. I think his highest was like 136.
His highest passing was 202. It was against the Titans.
The Titans, revenge game, yeah. And it was only 202 and 1, 13 for 19. He actually, well, I don't want to say he got outplayed by Will Levis because Will Levis threw 2 interceptions, but Will Levis also went for 260 and 2, only scoring those 14 points. So that was also, I believe, a Josh Jacobs game. So.
And his best quarterback rating. His best quarterback rating was September 15th with the Colts, 85.7. He did have an 80%. I'm sorry, that was not his rating. Excuse me. His highest rating was this past weekend that's 3 weekends ago. Against the Jaguars, 152.9 rating. But he only came in after Jordan Love got. No, this is Malik Willis. 152.9 was his highest. Yeah, that was his highest rating. But that was at the end of the game for the Packers against the Jaguars. But yeah, his best passing game was against the Titans, and like you said, revenge game.
Hey, anyone in the chat right now, is it Jaguars or Jaguars? Fun question.
Question of the day.
Question of the day.
There you go.
AJ Dillon, please come back to. Hey, I'll one up you. You're getting Marshawn Lloyd, hopefully either this week or next, and that guy's got some prospect to be very good. I know Packers fans aren't too high on him, but there's a lot of talk around the league of Marshawn Lloyd being that guy. So it'd be interesting to see if they do give him a lot of reps going into the stretch, and could be an asset for them in the playoffs too, both in the passing game and on the ground. Obviously, he's a rookie, untested, so don't want to speak too much to him, but I have my opinions, and that opinion's pretty high.
I do think he's going to come out the gate swinging too once he does get the opportunity. Unfortunately for Lloyd, he started off on the IR for a little bit and then proceeded to, they activated his 21-day window, and he got appendicitis. So that's not great for a running back, especially because they get hit a lot. And see, there you go, Keegan. Yeah, it's hard to, when a guy's out almost all year, it's kind of hard to remember them. So nobody blames you for that one there. But that is definitely something that they are going to utilize him down the stretch, especially because of the fact that they are going to have to give Josh Jacobs a little bit of a rest here. He's been the bell cow, just what you seen with Joe Mixon yesterday. Joe Mixon was the guy for that offense for the Texans. 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards.
Oof. What a game for Joe Mixon last night. We haven't touched on that yet, but
if you guys want to, I could end up being really irritated with it really quick. I ended up having a parlay together, and I threw it together too, and I had Nico Collins first TD score. I don't know why, and I paired it with CeeDee Lamb anytime touchdown. It didn't matter either way, but could you imagine if that didn't get called back?
Yeah, that was brutal. I know there was a lot of fantasy football guys out there, guys and gals out there that we're
It was a
really
good way
excited.
to do it, by the way. I'm glad you did it that way.
And he looked
Guys
off
and
into
gals.
the distance.
I mean, people are excited for Nico to come back, and then for him to he not only had that touchdown first play of the game called back, he had a 33-yard reception that, in my opinion, after replay, still looked like a catch called back, and he ended with 4 for 54. Fun fact: both him and Tank Dell ended the game with 7 targets, 4 receptions, and 54 yards. How bizarre is that?
And you know what's even more annoying too? Just the fact that with the NFL this year, it's something that I've been talking about a lot more too. What exactly is the catch in the NFL? Because it seems that there's so much minuscule rules now too. If your ass is in the end zone, it's a catch. If it's part of a shin equals a foot. And it's just like things
A shin equals a knee.
Yeah. Yep.
Not a foot.
Whatever.
Very different.
It's
Ask
so
Garrett
much
Wilson.
more.
He knows.
And there's so much differentiating of what a catch is and what isn't. And in years past, it was never really questioned at all. It was just, here's the carbon copy. This is what a catch is. Move on. And is it maybe just the case that these wide receivers are a little bit more athletic, or is it just the case that the NFL is just changing over time too? And this is what you have to do to adjust as you end up playing more football, and you run into these instances that you don't just have the basic catch, 2 feet in, move on. That's it.
You can go back to the first week, Patriots Bengals. Mike Gesicki got screwed on a touchdown. You talk about the butt cheek being in, he hit that, it was in, that's a touchdown. And the refs or the NFL even came out and said that would have been that should have been a touchdown. I don't know why it got overturned, why, whatever the case was. It kind of just seems like it's based on what team the call goes for. It definitely seems that way. Keegan's got some strong opinions on the Bengals here.
Thanks, Keegan.
Yeah, definitely up in the air with all that. And then I have a side note, but I'll let Avi answer this first.
Do we not have any filters on those things? Come on now.
No.
Oh, well, this is
come on,
not a
free speech,
not
baby.
a family-friendly
Free
show,
speech.
huh?
No,
It is. I mean, kids shouldn't know how to read that unless if their parents saw them. Oh, wait, hold on. Breaking news.
Oh,
Cleveland Guardians manager Stephen Vogt named the AL Manager of the Year. Was that your side note?
That was my side note. My phone's been blowing up for it, so
fantastic.
I was like, "That's right here." I'm like, "All right."
I haven't even. Oh yeah, I got it too. All right, sweet.
Okay, yeah, you got it. All right.
He must be on that New York Times still.
Yeah. Wow, see,
yeah,
come on, kid
not
friendly.
back in Ohio
Kid
yet.
friendly. Come on, Avi.
Anyways, now just to touch off on all the rule changes and stuff this year. I mean, I think we can all agree the most annoying thing in the league this year is the amount of illegal man downfield calls that they're calling. I mean, talk about a butt cheek. A lineman who's 400 pounds will have half an ass cheek hanging over this 2-yard distance that they have, and the refs are calling it every time this year. It's like, what vendetta does the NFL and the NFL referees have against linemen that they're like, we're gonna completely ruin plays that are fantastic, great for the fans, great for all these things. And I hate to say this, but what I look towards is, it favors the under, it kind of helps the books a little bit. And, that's how I tend to look at things now that all this gambling has gotten so big. There's going to be some influence in there sometimes. And I think some of these rule changes might have something to do with it.
I don't think you're wrong there.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Avi, on that one.
But, I mean, before we end up wrapping up talking football, unless if you guys want to add anything else to the Texans-Cowboys, the Cowboys haven't won a home game since 2024. They haven't won one at all. I keep on seeing the meme. It is ridiculous. But it kind of goes hand in hand with the next topic that we're just going to brush by. The Cleveland Browns versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers win, right?
I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Cam, let's be real.
He's out.
Oh, he actually left.
No, I could kick him.
Oh, you actually kicked him? Oh, get wrecked, dude.
You want to come
Eating
back?
in debates. I get it. It's typical
He just
Steelers
comes
fan.
back in
Typical Steelers
crying,
fan.
just
We're good.
bawling.
That'd
I
be
mean,
perfect.
Cam, do you genuinely think the Browns have a chance to beat the Steelers? Of course, we say that. and then
No. This is going to be a game where Cleveland is going to fire their whole entire regime. Head coach, general manager. The only two I think that will survive, which one is probably going to be your interim head coach, is going to be Jim Schwartz. That defense gave up on that play, but they are still one of the better defenses, whether, they're on the field too long or whatever the case is. They've been good. Okay. Now the effort towards these plays have been an issue. And that is something that, you have to teach in practice and instill through your head coach. Our head coach is not built for the yelling and the screaming like Jim Schwartz has done with the Eagles in the past to win a Super Bowl. You need that tough love, and that is something that we don't have here with our head coach in Cleveland. So I do think that this is going to be a firing regime. The other candidate that is technically not on payroll, but is definitely helping the Browns right now, is going to be Mike Vrabel. You could see him potentially take over as the next head coach. Avi, you kind of already seen that one coming with that comment.
I called that a long time ago. Yeah, I would love to see Vrabes come in as the head coach for the Browns. I mean, you've had enough of a vacation, all right, Vrabes? Come on, let's get back in the league here. You got stuff to do. So, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with Cam's sentiment that they're going to fire the whole regime after this game. I think that's going to happen after the season. Yeah, 100%. But I at least hope they don't do it. I always feel like it's a bad look for programs when they're firing coaches mid-season. Especially when it's really not, in my opinion, it's not the coach's fault. Going into this year, they have a guy starting who, at quarterback, Deshaun Watson, Voldemort, if you will, who nobody likes him. Nobody on the team, I mean, they didn't come out and say it directly, but it seemed like nobody really respected the guy, and I feel like that's a big reason that these guys weren't playing hard. They were going out, and they didn't give a shit about the team because they're playing for this guy that they didn't even like. And then as soon as Deshaun Watson goes down, next game out, they look like a completely different team. And I don't think that's just because of Jameis Winston. I think it's because of a complete shift in the energy of the team, of the position players, of the skill players, of the offensive and defensive lines. I mean, everything looked better. They just can't sustain that. And for whatever reason, they can't keep that energy up. And I think, Cam, you are right saying that is a coaching problem, but I don't foresee them firing everyone.
I mean, don't want to be that guy, but every time that things always go bad for the Browns and the Steelers, it always happens that a head coach gets fired, usually after a game against the Steelers. And I've seen it plenty of times on many different news outlets, but the one thing that I keep on hearing, and the one thing I think might be the right approach, is that if you end up having Kevin Stefanski fired on Friday and you want Mike Vrabel as your head coach, that's the move you need to do now, because a lot of people are going to want him after this season, and he's going to want to be a head coach. Not too many people might have been looking at him this year, but you've seen what he did in Tennessee. That wasn't just Derrick Henry. That was a lot of a locker room that banded together. They ended up having a great team, and I mean, that's the move you have to make if you want to end up keeping Vrabel in the future. But at the same time, are you comfortable with the fact that Kevin Stefanski, the two-time coach of the year award winner, isn't going to be your guy anymore, and he could make shit shine?
I just read Keegan's comment. Man, can you be a regular on the show, Keegan? Come on, we love these type of comments here.
Come back every Tuesday. That's good stuff. But no, Keegan, if or anyone that's watching, go ahead and clip my my statement to Mike Vrabel to get his butt off the couch and come back and be a head coach. Maybe it'll help coerce the team to make something happen. It'll definitely make Cam happy, that's for sure.
And maybe it'll make Bucky's happy too,
Good.
Always got to bring Bucky's into this.
Dude, we're trying to get sponsors.
You gotta love those Bucky nuggets.
Bucky's
Come on.
the last.
Those Bucky nuggets are great. Come on.
We're just gonna keep
that brisket sandwich is fire.
The
This guy
one
knows what he's
time
talking about.
my one buddy, when we were doing the show before, just a side note to anybody new that has actually not been watching. So he actually ended up getting Burger King the one time. He had the crown and he jokingly made the claim that Burger King was a sponsor. And he was just eating the sandwich during the show. And he was like, yeah, this is our new sponsor. They just gave me this cool crown. And it was absolutely ridiculous. But sometimes making them laugh, you make the right person laugh, you never know what might happen.
It's true. Imagine this show, like halfway through, it just cuts to Whopper, 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 Whopper.
Seen too many of those memes over the years.
Dude. Well,
We can
I've
make
seen
that
too many of
happen,
those commercials. We could.
Peyton's making it happen right now, actually.
is not-
He's
I'm
looking at the video. We're going to cut over from that and then the show. I guarantee that's how he's going to play it.
We'll save that for
funny.
TikTok. But
Okay.
anyways, changing gears, the time that we're going to end up talking about probably now until the end. Side note, Kevin Stefanski, who knows what his future is. He was once the coach of the year, but with baseball, rookie of the year, you ended up hearing Stephen Vogt winning manager of the year, but then rookie of the year without any debate. Paul Skeens won that. We'll end up probably diving in that a little bit more next week, just because baseball, that's not going to change. But I did want to actually, before we end up going into the Cavs talk, you have to end up going into the fact that there was a bet that we ended up talking about, and this is our bet that is all of us, I believe, have it. I ended up tailing it. I don't know if Cam did, but I really like that idea right there. And I mean, I'm stupid when it comes to betting for me. I had it in the Cavs money line. 16-0, I hope.
Peyton, if I may, I'll kind of explain what our thought process here and the way we kind of went about it. So
yeah,
essentially, we our plan originally was to kind of do like a triple crown style of a bet where we each pick our best bet for this game and parlay those all together. And we ended up going with this because, well, Peyton didn't pick one, but I picked one for him, which is Donovan Mitchell, 20 plus points. And funny enough, in the group chat with three of us, Peyton goes, how'd you know I wanted that? I had a feeling.
Big Donovan Mitchell guy. Big Donovan Mitchell guy.
Huge Donovan Mitchell guy.
Huge.
But yeah, and then so Evan Mobley, 8+ rebounds. I mean, that was my pick, and I look at Evan Mobley as possibly having a huge game tonight. We go back to some of the games last year against the Celtics, and Evan Mobley went off in some of those games. He had a career game last year, actually, against Celtics at home in Cleveland. He scored 31 points, 17 rebounds. I mean, that was an insane game from Evan Mobley, and obviously he's been playing really well this year. And I think a lot of the offense will flow through him. So I'm thinking a lot of offensive rebounds for Evan Mobley tonight. And then Darius Garland over 26.5 points and assists was Cam's pick. Cam, you want to kind of explain your thought process behind that pick?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen a big surge from Darius Garland. Obviously, Mitchell used to be the number one scorer going into last season, and this year it seems like we're kind of distributing it all over the place. Garland does tend to get about 4 to 8 assists, roughly in that range a game. We've seen a good game from him last time. Mitchell got the rest, and all that, but we've seen what happened in the playoffs last year. If you shut out Donovan Mitchell, you win the playoff series. That's what happened against Cleveland last year. Now this year, you can't do that. So you could focus on Mitchell. Okay, then Garland's going to score. I do think that this is the game where Garland does get, maybe 6 assists, but he's going to go over 20 points.
Love that. Yeah. And Payton, I'm not sure if you have it queued up, but we also did a high flyer parlay. This is kind of cooked up in my brain, which
I don't think I have it, but
some
I do
similar
have
picks.
So where we gotta stay? Gotta stay dangerous. Always and forever.
That wasn't it, was it?
You're goofball.
That was great,
I love
though.
it.
That was great.
Hold up. If you end up just setting the scene, I can actually, with the work of technology, could cue it up.
All right, cool. Yeah. So I generally like to do a parlay. Cameron knows this with a bit more juice to it. But I also like to try and make it something that's easily hittable. And when I say easily hittable, it's not, we're not going to be doing 5 points for every player on the team or anything stupid like that. It's looking back at historicals and seeing how do these games usually play out. Do certain players usually dominate the game? And is there any lines that look a bit off? So for this particular one, there was one line that looked a bit off to me, and that was Evan Mobley for 1+ block. I mean, we see Evan Mobley having 2-3 blocks a game right now. I mean, the guy is ridiculous in post defense. So against Al Horford in the post, I mean, easily 1 block in this game. The other is going to be Jason Tatum for 20+ points. That's kind of I just think the way the line looks is, I don't know. It's not, there's too much juice on 20 points for Jason Tatum. And then Donovan Mitchell has dominated in the big games for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I don't see that trend stopping. So Donovan Mitchell, 30+ points. And the line on this bet right here, when you include the Cleveland Cavaliers, has actually gone up since I sent this to the guys at what time was it?
Like 4:40, 5 o'clock.
4:45? Yeah.
5:06.
5:06. There you go. It's actually jumped up to plus 728 now. So it is. They've actually. They think there's a less of a chance of it happening, but more juice on the bet. And me personally, I told these guys this is how I'm going to go about it. We like to use FanDuel, and FanDuel tonight is offering a 30% boost on live bets. So I have this saved. You can click, save this bet. So I have it saved, and as soon as the game hits 7:10, I'm going to go in. Just click the save bet, add all these to my bet slip, and then use that 30% increase to move this up to about plus 1,000. So that'll be, a $100 win on a $10 bet. So if you guys want to tail, let us know in the comments below, or shoot us a DM if it loses. You can shoot us some nasty DMs. It's understandable. I wouldn't be happy either, but let's look to win some money tonight, boys.
Absolutely. I will go back on my bet on Garland. I just looked up his stats again because I didn't have it in front of me the first time we talked about it. He went over 26.5 points plus assists in 7 out of the last 10 and has done it in 3 straight.
Ooh, that's juicy.
He's been like consistent.
That. 4 out of his last 5 as well. He's done that. The last game he did not was against the Bulls.
Yeah, and that Bulls was that was the first of the 2 Bulls games.
Yes, that was the one on the road. Yep.
Yeah, that game was a bit of a scrap. So I foresee this being a high-scoring game between the Celtics and the Cavs. I mean, national TV, they're going to want some cinema. So hopefully the refs let the boys play and don't get in the way of scoring. That's my only worry on this game is national televised event. Sometimes the refs get a little wonky. But if they don't, then we should have some good chances of hitting these over bets and hopefully these parlays together. So should be a fun game to watch.
I mean, the Cavs, if they become 16-0, I might be crazy for this. If they do, I really like the chances for the Cavs to make a run for the money for the Warriors' start of 24-0. I think Boston's the toughest competition you'll have. And Keegan said it. I mean, he said Ty Jerome, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and Cy Young.
We're jumping sports now.
That would be incredible. Cy Young for Ty Jerome.
I like
it's a typhoon. It's a typhoon, ladies and gentlemen.
I did a typhoon. You've been on Twitter, haven't you?
I have. Is
that what they're saying?
Yes. Yeah, they're calling it typhoon. Yeah,
it's amazing.
I'll send the meme later. I'll send the photo later.
I mean, we're sending him. Oh, I was gonna. I don't want to say that. Never
mind. Here's
PG.
another one.
PG. Well, no, it was PG.
Give him the Heisman.
I don't want this to happen. I was going to say if it's a typhoon, that means he's going to Southeast Asia. But we don't want him to leave the Cavs, so that's why I'm not going to say that.
I got you. I see where you're going now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Boston, the thing is that what I hate about tonight's game is the fact that you have players hurt. You have players that are questionable going into tonight's game already. And I mean, if they win tonight, it just shows you how this year is going to be. If they beat Boston with Donovan Mitchell, with Evan Mobley, with Jared Allen, I mean, did I say Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell? I know I said 3 out of the 4, but I mean, if the thing is if they have the ability to still find people off the bench to score, I mean, Keegan, we all on the same page. If Ty Jerome is able to produce and step up with these minutes that he gets, because Karis LeVert's questionable, he might be the 6th man.
Just look that up. Didn't want to cut you off there. Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and Karis LeVert are all out against Boston tonight.
There's
no excuse. There's no excuse for either side. Sam Merrill is green lighted though, so we'll see what happens there.
Well, and don't forget, we still have guys coming back. Max Strus hasn't played a game yet. That guy's electric. I mean, I was at the game last year when he hit the 72-footer to win the game. That was the greatest moment of sports that I think I've ever seen. It was ridiculous. And who else? There's a few other guys that haven't played yet that might get some more minutes. I mean, Tristan Thompson doesn't really play right now. George Niang, I love that guy. Yeah, well, be dangerous. Yeah, this team is so fun to watch, and I think they're just going to keep getting better. And if they can notch this win, it'll just be, one more step towards their march of greatness.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you want to end up taking it a step further too, when Max Strus comes back, the conversations are going to end up happening. We'll be talking about them. Are you trading Isaac Okoro or are you trading Max Strus? Because you have to end up having one of them be your starter with the way Isaac Okoro has given a run for his money as to be the 3rd for the Cavs. Max was the guy beforehand, but he's probably the most tradable contract that's there. And that's what I've heard from a couple of friends too that are in the media. They've said the same thing. That's not a bad idea. And you need, or you would like, another big and just about any piece at this point. You never know. Instead of worrying about buyouts, waivers, whatever, make the trade and get something valuable.
I wouldn't necessarily say I'd get rid of either one of those guys. I think going to get a guy, I've seen a lot of rumors about getting Larry Nance back. Could be interesting. It could be interesting. He can tend to be a scrappy player as well. But,
I watched a lot of him in the G League, and that guy is very good. Yeah.
I will say that going into this, though, it kind of gives me that 2016, 2017 run. Kyle Korver was your starting shooting guard, and they asked him to go to the bench. Could you see that with Max Strus coming off the bench and being a big shooter coming in off the bench? You could see something like that. I don't think necessarily you have to get rid of either one of them. I'll take the defense with Okoro in my starting lineup because you don't have top-tier defense with Mitchell and Garland. They are both decent defenders. They are not known for their defending, though.
What I like about Strus coming back and having Merrill on this team is they can kind of play that interchangeable knockdown 3-point role. Obviously, Sam Merrill has progressed a ton in the past couple of years, and that's another one of these guys that I watched. I watched a lot of basketball with those guys. I actually saw Sam Merrill's his 11 3-point game in the G League. I don't think I've mentioned it on the show yet, but my wife used to work for the Cavaliers, and I spent a lot of time around. Oh yeah, I mentioned it last episode. I take it back. Anyways, I spent a lot of time at G League games watching the up and coming guys. So and Sam Merrill was one of those guys, and I think he's a great complement to what Max Strus has already been for the Cavaliers. And when Max Strus comes back, I think Sam Merrill kind of goes back into the backup role behind Max Strus, but still has that knockdown 3-point ability behind him.
I mean, I really like the way that you could end up having that rotation of just having an all-3 lineup. I mean, Evan Mobley's emerged a ton from the 3-point line, taking shots that we've never seen him take before, and that's part of the game that he's just grown so much as a player. And, I mean, I really like the feeling I'll have by the time we come back here next week if the Cavs win against Boston, because after that, Not saying the games don't matter, because the Cavs have managed to make everything close and emotional and keep you invested in a game. But this is arguably the biggest game so far earlier on in the season, just because of the undefeated streak on the line, and it also being Boston that won the NBA championship.
I would like to mention real quick, I'm taking a peek at the betting lines, and if anything's happened, Cavs will win tonight. I mean, what I'm about to say you might not like then, Keegan, because it appears the late money is coming in on the Celtics. The Cavaliers, not even an hour ago, were at plus 180 and plus 2.5 on the spread, and have now moved to plus 7 and plus 225 on the money line.
Just makes it an even juicier win.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the late money's going on the Celtics, defending champions. Like, yeah, the people are going to put the big money on the Celtics, especially when they were getting them at, minus 180 or whatever it was, however, an hour ago. So I always like looking at the lines close to game time, because I find it fascinating where the late money goes. It's usually a tell of where the big money is. So just thought I'd let you guys know.
Learning something about sports betting every time, because whenever we talk about it in our group chat, you guys throw something out there and I go, you know what? I guess you twisted my arm. I guess I'll bet tonight. And that just...
We're not making you do anything.
You don't force me to do anything, but you twist my arm. You talk about it, and then next thing you know, you go, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Well, me and Avi hit a bet the other day, and you didn't follow. So, I mean, those are...
Good thing I didn't, because that was a loser, wasn't it?
No, the one I won was that Cavs one, the combo, and then Avi won that, what was it, Sunday Night Football you won?
Sunday Night Football for $250, yeah.
Speaking of sports betting, I know we talked about possibly doing another show around that.
Want to tease it a little bit, Payton?
Yeah, possibly on Sundays before the NFL games. This Sunday would be very interesting, though, because there is no Browns, there's no Steelers, but there's still football, even with a couple teams on bye weeks. But we're going to end up probably doing on Sunday a little bit before kickoff, probably like 11:45 to 12:30 or so. We'll end up being here on We Like Sports PC on Twitter. That would be on YouTube, on Facebook, giving you a little preview of the action. And then kind of like how you saw with the bets tonight with the Cavs, with the juicy bets as well, the juicy winners. We'll end up doing that then too with NFL. We'll end up having a line with your line, the money line, your over-under, anything of that capacity between all three of us. And then a little doctored up bet with the over passing yards, over reception yards, over receptions, so on and so forth. So you kind of get the hint, but that'll probably be on Sundays that we'll end up doing before kickoff. And I mean, if you guys are interested, just tell us, and we could end up also throwing it out on the social media pages too for when we aren't on the air. If you want to see the college bets that I tend to lose on, but when I don't place the bet, they win. Just don't tail me at the end of the day.
Yeah, Ohio State kind of hurt us last weekend, but hey, whatever. Yeah, and then I think we're doing anytime touchdown. We'll each have a person for anytime touchdown as well. I know I'm in 4 fantasy football leagues. Avi, I believe you're in a few, and Payton, are you in a couple? You're in 3, yeah. So
yep.
I mean, I went to 3 straight out of my 3 championships out of 4 last year. We're here to help out with any advice that you might have, or any toss-ups between guys. We're definitely here for that.
We can definitely do a bit of like a Q&A if you guys want to come in and do some questions for fantasy. Like Cam said, he's very good at fantasy. My main league with a bunch of my buddies from school is 14 guys. I picked 12th, and I'm currently 10-1. So I think I know what I'm doing also.
I'd say so.
Not to brag, but definitely to brag.
I was projected 120 in my one league back-to-back weeks, and I scored 200 and 193. So,
all right,
definitely love that.
I was projected 7th in my one league, and I was in first, and I'm still in first, but I'm barely hanging on. But I got explicit words and whatnot.
Yeah,
I mean, I could end up keeping it.
That's only for Keegan.
Yeah,
the only one.
We'll leave it for Keegan.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna end up.
Keegan, don't say anything crazy in the chat. All right. Calm down.
Well, you asked for it, okay?
I revoke my statement.
We're blaming you.
Revoke my statement.
But we're gonna end up heading out of here. We got a Cavs game to watch. Avi's got to end up finishing out his wine, And Cam's got to end
Fast.
up probably letting his dog out. Yes, he has a dog.
I have
I've
two,
also got a
and one of
dog.
them has
I
been
got a
doing
dog.
tail chases the whole time. That's why I keep looking over. He's been chasing his
Oh,
tail.
he's probably
Shepherd
fired
Husky,
up,
man,
huh?
they're hyped up.
There it is again by Keegan, just to close out the show.
Thanks, Keegs.
Screenshot that for Alex.
Shout out.
But we'll end up seeing you guys next Tuesday here. And then also on Sunday, we'll see you this week talking football. Let's roughly say 11:45 to 12:30. We barely show up on time, but we do show up on time when we come up with the time too. It's just that intro that gives us a little leeway. But thanks for tuning into the We Like Sports Show. You've been listening. Hear us on the podcast formats. I'm going to try to get that up as soon as possible, just so you probably won't end up hearing it last second, but you'll know if we're right or not just going into the Cavs game. But we'll see you here next Tuesday. Cam, plug your social media. Avi, give out your Instagram for people to DM us again, just like you did last week. I'm sure millions of people have reached out.
So many DMs last week, all 0 of them. Yes. No, so you can follow. You can find me at Avi Ehrlich on Twitter and on Instagram. That's AVIEHRLICH. Cam?
In my bio right there, or in my username there, sportsboycam. And then you can also find Avi liking all of Bucky's posts as well if you go through the links.
But
that was good.
Find me here at Payton Vince and on our Twitter page at We Like Sports PC. Follow us. We'll follow back. Why not? But we'll see you guys next Tuesday, next Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, 11:45 to 12:30. You've been watching the We Like Sports Show. You've been listening to the We Like Sports Show. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.